Okay, we're a few minutes past noon, so I'm going to start rolling so people can get out of here on time, because I know that's important for many of us. I'm not sure there's anybody here I don't know, but if you haven't met me yet, I'm Bryan Griffith. I'm the chair of the Solo Small Firm Committee for this last year. If you're interested in taking over next year, let me know. Trying to groom somebody. If nobody volunteers, you will be all appointed, every single one of you. So, very pleased to get started with another year. We start our committee years in September, run through May. So this is our first session in the year. Next month, we're going to be talking about buying and selling small firms, which is both a personal estate planning technique for you, something you need to consider if you're a small firm or solo attorney. Who's going to buy your practice, or what's going to happen when you die? Are you going to leave your family or spouse with that mess to clean up? It's a topic we've discussed quite a bit over the last year, but what attorneys are supposed to do to plan for their own death. And then we're going to get back to marketing and talk about niche practices in November, and what it means to have a niche, how you develop a niche, why it's valuable to have a niche. And in January, we're going to talk about ethics. So we've got a pretty full schedule, but if you have something you want to talk about, let me know. In addition to this event, we're also, next Thursday, we'll have the lunch, which will be down on the Commons. Is that this way? Out that window? That window. Okay. We'll be down on the Commons with the food trucks next Thursday, noon to 1. And Donna always puts out some drinks for us, so it's a good time. We've had a lot of fun over the summer eating outside and just socializing. And then is the practice lab? Not yet. So keep your ears open. We're going to try to do the practice lab again this year, which we had fun. We had a small crowd last year to do some practice labs, one-on-one. Bring your laptops to do some real hands-on sessions. So that will probably be coming shortly. I'm going to give everybody a chance to introduce yourself. I'm glad we have a small crowd. And so give us your name, your firm, and what is your niche or your practice area. Beginning.
I'm John Brescia. I'm on my own in the J. Brescia Legal Services business, and right now I'm just starting out, so I have no niche at this stage.
Meredith Moriarty,
I am Christopher Allwine, and I work for a 2.5-person firm, Williams Allwine and Moser, and we specialize in utility law and efficiency and renewable energy development.
Kimberly Lee, I work for Fisher & Douglas. I do primarily real estate, small business, transactions, and roles around that.
I'm Sir Matt Kaufman. I work for Chief Offices, President's Rights.
I'm Jeffrey Coates. I've been solo for about 5 or 6 years. Primary is small business. I also have a niche in white collar defense.
My name is Brian Dean, solo, Brian Dean Law, in my area of practice.
Mark Stansbury, Stansbury Law Firm, also solo. I do corporate tax and advertising.
My name is Marissa Bowers. I practice in the areas of domestic relations and criminal defense.
My name is Brad Miller, do solo, and I do advice for small business entrepreneurs.
My name is Matt Austin. I have my own firm called Austin Legal. My niche is legal law.
Sean Dingus, Blackwell Dingus, mostly personal injury, but also some commercial.
Sean Mallory, Davis and Gilshan over at Easton. I do primarily personal injury defense and personal injury claims.
Doug Althauser Law LLC. Been in solo practice coming up to the end of my 2nd year right now. My niche right now would be domestic law, guardian ad litem work, and juvenile defense.
Dan Roletter. I'm with Carlisle, Patch and Murphy, and my practice is primarily with financial institutions and real estate development.
Very good. Well, I don't think I meant I do trucking litigation, trucking company litigation, not personal injury, but business of trucking. So we have a good time doing that. Thanks all for sharing. We're gonna try to collect your niches before the November meeting, so we can talk more about that and have some idea where people stand and have a referral list, so we can know where to go when you want a small firm instead of just doing what I do this year, which has been sending out lots of emails trying to find people who do things. So we're going to try to help me solve my problem and get a list of all of you so I know who to call. I am very pleased, as you may have been able to tell from my exuberant emails, that I was able to convince Dr. Blackwell to join us today. You are by far my favorite professor of all time. And
Was that easy?
I would say not. I did a lot of work in that class, in a OSU Fisher College of Business marketing class. And as a lawyer, we have had a lot of professors over the years, right? So it's not a small group of people that you have risen to the top of. So I'm very delighted to bring you here to talk about what you do best, which is marketing. Dr. Blackwell is the author of many of the best marketing books you can find on the shelf. And he's spent the last year focusing on law firms, really helping our friends at Cooper and Elliott to market their practice. So I'm sure that he has lots of great insight, life lessons, all of the things that I learned in his class. You're going to condense into 40 minutes here, right?
I thought you said 3 hours.
Oh, pardon me. Well, without further ado, Dr. Roger Blackwell. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brian. I have a question. Besides Brian, do I have any other former students here? Mark? So Mark and Brian, 2 former students. And I'll give you well, 65,000 students just coming ahead of Ohio State. How do you recognize them? The answer is you don't. You only remember the A students and the troublemakers. So I'll let you figure out which is which. But I am pleased to be here. And Brian said he wanted me to put the microphone on so they could record this, which is fine. Now, I was giving a speech one time in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, and a newspaper reporter was there, and he said, after the speech, he recorded the whole thing, audio. He said, I think our readers would be interested in reading this. Would you mind if I put the verbatim transcript into the newspaper? And I said, no, I don't know. Yeah, that's fine, but I said, sometimes when you tell jokes and then you try to print them, they don't come out right. And I said, so yes, you can put the verbatim, but go through and take out all the jokes and don't print those, and send me a copy of the newspaper. And he did. And so a few days later, I got the newspaper verbatim, everything I said. And at the bottom, he said, in addition to the above comments, Dr. Blackwell told a few jokes that can't be printed. So I was getting a little worried, but I am glad to be with you today. And I thought we'd just talk about marketing. Glad to answer questions at any time. I want to not talk about tactics in marketing so much, although they are important, but I want to talk about strategy more. And when I talk about tactics of communicating with potential clients, we certainly mean all of these. Actually, publicity is probably the most important one up there. You get more bang from your buck with good publicity than you do media paid advertising. Now you might say, well, why wouldn't you just do that? Well, the answer is you can't control it. And it actually takes more time than media advertising. The most costly part of publicity is your own time. No billable hours there, but it will lead to more billable hours usually than anything else you can do if you do it right. So you can't rely on it totally if you want a controlled communications program. So, of course, print. Print has the advantage of the things that we see, we tend to remember more than the things we just hear. And we hear so much more selectively than print. So print is important. And of course, one of those things in print are these things. Does anybody here remember the Yellow Pages? This one was delivered to my house about 2 days ago. And of course, what section is the biggest section in there? Lawyers. I mean, it's I started to say a third, not quite that much, but it's a big section. So obviously somebody's using it. And a lot of those are fairly small firms. It used to be that the big full-page ads were mostly big firms, you know, the Porter Wrights and the Carlyle. Is that a small firm? Okay. But today, of course, it's some fairly small people, because a small solo practitioner can get a lot more representation. I mean, those are some interesting firms in there. And there's lots of small and large too, but so somebody's using it. My position is that mostly we use Yellow Pages for two reasons. One, a lot of the people for sole practitioners, especially in criminal and bankruptcy and those areas, really don't have the technology in many cases. So they do still rely on these things. But you also, the second reason is you get access to a lot of digital technology by being in the Yellow Pages, the apps and those kinds of things. Broadcast has the advantage in that it is passive communications as well as active. Now, many of these others require somebody to actively go search for somebody. That assumes they kind of know what they're looking for, whereas broadcast allows people to communicate with people who are not interested. And so you can stop and see personal injury lawyers with bad hair pieces or whatever. Oh, never mind, I bet you. Obviously, direct mail, still interesting. I have seen some studies recently on email messages versus direct mail. And the direct mail pulls more than email, typically. And so direct mail is very effective. The most effective thing, it goes a little too far, but a very important part of direct mail is what you put on the envelope, because that determines whether people open it or not. And I've seen people who had very good messages inside, but nobody ever sees it because they didn't give as much attention to what you put on the outside of the envelope. A lot of people say, well, what's different in the last 10 years? That's different, and it's very, very important. There's no question that how you handle the website is a very important part of anybody's practice. And the social media. How important is Facebook? Well, kind of interesting. If you look at the metrics of Facebook, do you know what the fastest growing metric at Facebook is? Number of dormant accounts. Tells you something. I was at the American Marketing Association Educators Conference about 2 weeks ago in Chicago. And I would say over half of the scholarly papers were about social media. There were 1,000 papers submitted, about 200 of them given, and I would say at least a half of them were on social media. And so I picked up a lot of statistics and research reports and so forth. One of the more interesting little things was Twitter accounts. Did you know over 50% of all Twitter accounts are never used after they're opened? Which I thought was an interesting metric also. So my caution would be, don't chase the trend and ignore the substance. Because the substance is still up here, although the trend is here. And if you depend on these things instead of the substance, that's not a good thing. Pardon me. Now, it is interesting, of course, is some of the most effective marketing for both large law firms and small ones is with other lawyers, of course. I used to do a lot of seminars for large law firms, and I've had experience with some fairly large law firms. I appeared as an expert witness so many times and saw the intricacies of these. I testified a lot on the tobacco cases, and I was in a meeting one time in which there were 150 lawyers representing all the same side of the parties. This wasn't even, they were just getting ready to go to war. And I knew, and this was in Washington, D.C., in a room 3 times the size of this with huge table. You know, the lead lawyer would be sitting where you're sitting and 2 or 3 people in chairs behind them. you know, going like this all the time. And I knew that the billing rates of the lead lawyers, at least, were usually $600 to $800 an hour, and $350 or up for the others. And there were I think it was 175 lawyers actually, but 150 or whatever. And I started multiplying because I was the expert witness who was going to represent them before both Congress and the FTC, and this was all on the tobacco side, actually. And I was just calculating 175 times 650 times 350, and thinking, I'm not charging right for being an expert witness. I was going to get all modest about it. But with other lawyers is very, you know, a lot of my experience of various kinds have been with large law firms, and I understand the billing rates and so forth. But I would argue for small firms that these, you know, a publication in Columbus CEO or the Bar Paper or any of these, or Daily Reporter or these things like that, is some of the most effective things that can be done. It doesn't go directly to consumers, but it does go to the referral process and professional interaction, just like today, and personal interaction. You know, who do you have lunch with, and that sort of thing. A lot of my work, my doctoral dissertation was on the marketing of professional services. So I've been involved in not only lawyers, of course, but actually more of my time has been in the medical profession. And anybody know what my doctoral dissertation was on? Funeral directors. That's the database I used for the marketing of professional services. People say, what kind of marketing problems do they have? People are dying to get into their business. No. But I actually have worked with funeral directors enough to tell you that they are some of the finest people I've ever seen. As a friend, they would be the last person in the world to let you down. But no. Moving on. But these are tactical things. And we could spend hours talking about these. We won't. But if we look at marketing, what does that really mean? The definition, it's a misunderstood word. Marketing is the process of changing the organization. And how many people did you have in your organization? That means changing you to have what people, call them customers. You use the word business, which is interesting. Did you know that working with many professions, that was a no-no, is to call it a business? It's a professional practice. A lot of my seminars for physicians were condoned and supervised by the American Medical Association, and we developed a seminar for, actually it was plastic surgeons that I did all over the country, and it was marketing for plastic surgeons. American Medical Association said, no, we had to change the title to practice enhancement rather than marketing, because professions don't do marketing. Now, that was a few years ago, but to have what people will buy at a profit. I always liked Governor Rhodes, because his motto for the state of Ohio was, profit is not a dirty word in the state of Ohio. Where's Rhodes when we need him? Well, I guess I could ask one of my funeral director friends that question. But it means changing yourself to have what people will buy at a profit. A lot of confusion between marketing and selling. Selling is part of marketing, but that's not marketing. Selling is telling people what you have, but marketing is having what they will buy at a profit. And marketing is a process of changing you or the organization, and that's what marketing is really all about, which means you'd have to start with asking the question, what will people buy? Not, what do I want to do? But what will people buy? Now, after you figure that one out, then you have to communicate that what you want to be done for you, that's what I do. And that's the selling process. The most famous ad in the legal profession that you all studied in law school, probably, was this ad. I wish I had a copy of the actual ad. I don't. I've only got it from the court documents. The ad said, do you need a lawyer? Legal services at very reasonable fees. Now, this was done in 1972. Okay, that tells you what case it is, doesn't it? Divorce or legal separation, uncontested, $175 plus $20 court filing fee. Okay, this 72, prices have changed a little, not too much, but a little. Preparation of all court for $100. Adoption, uncontested severance, $225. Somebody here did adoptions, was it? I thought I heard somebody say that, but one of my good friends who does a lot of domestic relations is adoption. And that was several years ago when private adoptions were still common. They're not that common anymore. But bankruptcy, no contested proceedings, individual $250, wife and husband together $300, etc. That was an ad for the legal clinic of Bates and O'Stern. And of course, that resulted in a court case called, as you all remember from law school, Bates versus the State Bar of Arizona. Went to Supreme Court, settled in 76, and it said, changed the whole marketing and selling function. It said, advertising is okay. Prior to 76, depending, states varied a little bit, but it was not. So what we're talking about here today would have brought you up on ethics charges, leading to possible disbarment. If what we're talking about is common today, if any of these people who've got all these ads in here were to do this prior to 76, although it depends on the state, but would it be disbarred? So things have changed quite a bit. You say there is? Or
I think there are.
I do too. Like I said, my appointment at Ohio State was in the medical school as well as the business school, Fisher College. And I taught healthcare marketing. And the first group that I worked with a lot was plastic surgeons, and they were on the forefront of this. Today you see all kinds of things, but I still encounter a lot of doctors, oh, I wouldn't advertise, that's unprofessional. Well, it's legal, but it's considered a taboo in many professions. And, you know, the funeral directors were a database that I used, but professional marketing is professional marketing, basically whether we're talking about engineers or lawyers or doctors or whatever. And that was the famous case. We've come a long way since then. Does anybody know what this man is saying? It's a Miranova, I believe, wasn't it? Or, no. Oh, no. That's a case with his daughter, as I recall. But that's a whole other issue. But of course, here's the interesting thing: is everybody knows who this was. I would guess most people in the Columbus, Ohio, know that slogan. It is a slogan. Now, in marketing, we would call that a USP, unique selling proposition. Mark, you remember we talked about that, didn't we? Unique selling proposition. Proposition, what is that? That is an offer of a benefit. And it's a selling that you're willing to pay for. But the key is to make it uniquely associated with your firm instead of some other firm. It is your competence. Now, I didn't say you uniquely have that competence, but it is in the consumer client's mind uniquely associated with you. You see the difference there. And that's an important difference. And that's important. There's an old adage that among consumers, about 2% think, about 8% think they think, and the other 90% are waiting for a slogan. Well, he did get that slogan out there, didn't he? They even have Kevin Kurgis t-shirts now. But that's not what we're talking about when we're talking about marketing. How many have taken, not just with me, but other people, marketing classes someplace along the way? Okay, you all remember the 4 Ps, right? Product, promotion, price, and place. Now, marketing is a process of putting all those 4 Ps together by which an organization seeks survival through the delivery of demand satisfying. If you say, we always win, you're always going to make that? No. It has to be, but if you never win, or if you never really satisfy the client, how long are you going to survive? In fact, good advertising only accelerates the demise of a bad product. If you haven't got your product right, don't advertise, because people are going to find out your product's bad faster than the people who don't advertise. So you don't want to do that. And how you do it? By profitable exchanges. Who wins in a profitable exchange? The buyer, the seller, or society? And if you've ever taken multiple choice questions, you know the answer is probably all of the above. Okay? That's the marketing process. And it is an ongoing process of finding out what clients need matched to the capabilities of the firm. And if what the client needs is not your capability, what's the most important marketing activity you can do? Change the capability. And that's will be, when I get to the end today, probably the conclusion I hope you will draw. If we look at this in terms of the marketing, we could talk about tactics, but as I said, that's not our function today. It takes too many hours. It takes about a 10-week course, 11-week course under the quarter system. Now they've decided at Ohio State and most other schools, it takes 18 weeks to cover the same topic. But that's another matter. By strategy, we mean a decisive allocation of resources to a major course of action. I would hope that some of you would go back and think about, well, let's think about how the environment is changing and what is my strategy for really surviving and thriving in that environment in a way that will really be highly profitable. And that's what marketing is all about. Now, most people, when you look at the selling function, they think, oh, the marketing for the firm means telling the environment that's the tactics. But actually, it's a two-way bridge. So marketing is studying the environment. Do you really know what this country and this economy is going to be like 5 years from now? Well, you should if you're doing marketing. How's housing been doing? Housing sales the last few months. Did you read the news yesterday? In Columbus and the whole U.S. are now at the level they were at 2007. Number of sales. That's amazing. They've been going up about 10 or 11% the last couple of years, because they were very low to start with, but they're back now. They just announced yesterday in the news, and Columbus is actually leading other cities in the area. And so strategy is looking at this, and marketing is saying, I'm always looking at where we're going, not where we've been, because that'll get you in trouble. But we'll see, where are the niches for me? So your firm, if he wants to bring the dollars into it, starts out with looking at the environment for success. The problem with the environment is it keeps changing on us. It is a moving target. And when I talk about the environment, I'm not talking about solar panels or green diesel fuel. That's one definition, but I'm talking about the economy. I'm talking about technology. Interesting thing. Who's the world's richest family today in the world? About $500 billion of wealth. Who? Now, Gates is only about 50 billion. Who said it? Walton? The Walton family. A couple of years ago, somebody did analysis. The Walton family, a couple of years ago, was worth $403 billion. Now, that's when the stock was 53. It's about 73 today. So $500 billion is probably a pretty reasonable estimate. Incidentally, what age was Sam Walton when he started that firm? Anybody know? 45. I'll probably get in trouble here, but I won't ask you to show hands, but is there anybody 45 or less in here? There's still time for you to become, oh yeah, me. There's still time for you to become the world's richest family. Just cheer you up. Now, how did he do it? You hear some critics say, well, he put small businesses out of business. Remember, he was a small business in 1963 when he started that business. He had one store. Who did he put out of business? Montgomery Ward. This was little David with one store, put Montgomery Ward right out of business. And you know what? He's put Kmart into bankruptcy twice. Now, if you're really good, like Target, you can kind of keep up, but there's no comparison into the size. Here's how did he do that? Well, he just bought stuff, merchandise less than everybody else. Do you believe that? You hear people saying that. Everybody know what the Robinson-Patman says about that? Robinson-Patman Amendment says, no. Equal prices to buyers of similar quantity. You remember me talking about that in class, probably. They don't get to buy cheaper than Target. They get to buy cheaper than Harry's Hardware, but that's permitted. How does he do it? His expense ratio is 3 to 5 percentage points less than J.C. Penney's or Target or Sears. How did he do that? What's that? No. He pays more than Kroger. Kroger do that? I was in Bentonville, Arkansas last weekend. I drove around there. Bentonville's less than 50,000 people. Benton County is 450,000 people. Rows and rows of million-dollar homes. All owned by stock boys or stock girls. They didn't have any back then. Girls, many. They had a few, but not many. Of people who have million-dollar homes. Now, I should add, in Bentonville, a million-dollar home only costs about $300,000. How did they get them? They bought stock. I had breakfast with the former CEO of Sam's Club. He only has a high school diploma, as most of their employees do, or GEDs. He started as a stock person at Walmart when Sam had 19 stores. Worked his way up, and he started Sam's Club and became its first CEO of the fastest growing retailer in history. And how did they do that? Well, because they took stock instead of salary. Are there a lot of people who don't know how to do that? Of course. But you probably have $4 or $5 million on the average if you started out at Walmart as a very low paid employee. Now, if you don't want to do that, go work for Target or Kroger or someplace else like that. You'll get maybe higher, but here's what he did. He had a totally different corporate philosophy than most corporations. I've been around a lot of corporations. If you look, his expense ratio, because of technology, is about 5 percentage points less than his competitors. Now, if you take out 5% of your expenses, whether it's with low salaries or technology, although it's mostly technology at Walmart, what do you do with that in most corporations? Who gets the 5% of savings in most corporations? And every business book you've ever read says it goes to who? Shareholders. He doesn't believe that. He believes in giving back to the customers. And if you take and lower the price 5% each point to a customer when you have one store, guess what's going to happen very soon? What are the customers going to do who are going to other stores? They're going to come to your store. And when you get more of those and more of those, by giving the money to customers instead of shareholders. This is not the way the textbooks tell you should do it. That's unfair competition. You should give the money to shareholders, not to customers. Well, bottom line is you create the richest family in the world that way. And he's done it. Basically through technology. And I could tell you some stories about that. It's amazing. Obviously, government is very influential in this business. FCPA. Anybody do any FCPA cases? 10 years ago, that law didn't exist. 2 years after it was passed, it had 7 cases, I think, the first year. Last year it had hundreds of cases, some of them settling for $100 million, like Avon and some of these companies. FCPA stands for what? Federal Corrupt Practices Act. Did you say Federal Corrupt Prosecutors Act?
Foreign.
No. Oh, yeah, foreign. Yeah, you're right. It's Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Oh, guess who the defense lawyers billing $1 million to $5 million a year to those clients are? All former prosecutors. You prosecute them for a couple of years, can't do the same case, but then you go defend others. Is that a strategy for making a lot of money? Yeah. And that's a law that didn't even exist 10 years ago. And I've forgotten 2,000 or 3,000 cases now. So government has a lot of influence on the environment. However, we're not going to talk about that. Now, of the 4 Ps, we could talk about any of these, but we do not have time for that. Let's just emphasize product. And product is the basis for which everything else is designed. You start with what kind of product do we believe we will have unique and competent and maybe even superior capabilities to our competition. And that should be a decision, a strategy, rather than just happening. Now, if we think of product, I just listened to you as we went around. Some of you are in real estate, some bankruptcy. Has there been more or less bankruptcy cases in 20, 30 years ago? Probably because of changes in the environment. Domestic relations, some of you said. IP, and I'll come back to that one. International. Can a small firm do international law? In fact, you might say, oh, well, I've got to know all of the Geneva Code and all these. No. It's usually, I got to know how to represent my client in Venezuela. And a small firm actually might be able to do that more efficiently than a large firm, especially if you speak Spanish. M&A, maybe, probably not here. Criminal. What are most criminal cases? Drug cases. Is that, who said civil, white collar? Drug case, just like a civil white collar case? Very different, very different. Elder law, gas and oil. I don't know, is there any niches out there that might be helpful to people? And the riches are in the niches. Over and over and over. If you don't believe that, ask Mr. Wexner whether he's done well or not by taking market segmentation is the academic word, niches is the everyday word, and you develop product. Cooper and Elliott. We don't do a lot of corporate law. We don't do any of that, really, much, unless there's some particular reason. But if I had to do this, I had to say, when you think of Cooper and Elliott, what do you think about? And you know what the word I got? Really good litigators. And the interesting thing is, a lot of sole practitioners and small firms, do they have the resources to take on large potential judgments where you may go 2 or 3 years to get the judgment and another 2 or 3 years to collect on it? A lot of resources up front. So they actually serve as co-counsel with a lot of very solo practitioners and small ones. Is that a niche? That's a niche. And some people say, what kind of advertising do you do there? Have you seen all our ads in there? No, you won't. Don't see any on TV. You know what? I did a little research on that, of course. You know what? When I said Cooper and Elliott, you know what most of them said? Oh, that's that building on Riverside Drive, across from Scioto Country Club. Now, especially if you're working a lot as co-counsel with small law firms, is that pretty effective communications? Rent is your advertising cost. And it's very efficient because it's second use space, so forth. And so you don't see a lot of ads. You might see some publicity. Maybe somebody would talk about that with sole practitioners and small firms. But product dominance, that's a distinctive way to grow profitably in any firm. So product is the key, but change is the answer. What will people buy? Well, we could look at any of these things, competition. When you choose your competitors, you choose a lot of your success. We're talking about Walmart. When did they go to big cities? What time period? The beginning? Just recently. They're still not in New York City. A lot of people say, well, that was stupid. The biggest markets are in Chicago and New York. And so they didn't come to Columbus until Easton opened up. That was the first store in Columbus. Why? Who would you rather compete with? Sears or Harry's Hardware? See, when you choose your competition, you choose a lot about your marketing strategy. But the only time we have today we can talk about is the economy. How's the economy? I'm a marketing researcher, so let's just ask. Market research here. How many here, show of hands, think the economy is very good? May I see your hands? Mm-hmm. How many think it's good? May I see your hands? We got maybe 5 or 6. How many think it's bad? May I see your hands? We got more. How many think it's very bad? Nobody, at least. Okay, well, how is it? What does the economy mean? And I suspect a lot of people say, well, we're a manufacturing state. Incidentally, is manufacturing our most important industry sector in Ohio? No, no. What's the most important industry in the state of Ohio? Nope. Well, government, I'm going to say private industry sector. Private sector, what's our biggest exporter? GDP. What dominates Ohio more than any other industry? Yes. We export more in agriculture than all the manufacturing plants in Ohio combined. Okay? Yeah, manufacturing. A lot of people think of that as the economy. Oh, incidentally, how is the agriculture sector doing these days? You know? Oh, why do you say that?
Drought.
What? Don't you understand pricing? Pricing? When yield goes down, what happens to prices? It goes up. And guess what? They're coming out about the same for lower costs. I went to the Farm Science Review yesterday. Anybody go out there yesterday? Beautiful day. I've heard 100,000 people. I don't know whether that number is right or not, but based on the traffic jam getting out there, seems reasonable. Have you all seen these tractors? The wheels are taller than anybody in this room. And somebody, I talked to a farmer who had just bought 4 of these big tractor harvesters. You know what they cost? $600,000. He just bought 4 of them. Where do you get the credit for that? From his checkbook. Okay.
Most farmers are millionaires.
Oh. Who's the richest, or who's the owner of the largest farm in Ohio now?
Actually, owning land is called Steve.
Owning land. 5,000 acres out in Madison County. He is a billionaire. Bill Gates. Been buying farms all over the U.S. Land that was selling for $3,000 or $4,000. Somebody said, real estate's not doing so good. Well, if you're selling land at $3,000 or $4,000 5-6 years ago, and you're selling it now at $8,000, you're doing okay. They don't know what to do with all their money. So that would mean employment is really going up in agriculture. Is that right? No. As the economy gets better, what happens to employment? Here's the most startling thing you'll probably take away. When the economy is going well, what happens to employment? Let's just confine it to agriculture. Goes down. The better the economy, the less jobs. Why? Because the old economic theory said, well, when you run a factory faster, more, turn out more, you got to have more people. So it was 20, 30 years ago. If you look at the manufacturing economy, I'm going to skip over this. If you look at the manufacturing economy, we're at the all-time high. We've never made more things in this country's factories or the states than we did this year. It's been up, 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 up. Now there's some highly deceptive ads, frankly, probably technically accurate, but highly deceptive ads that say, well, China's gone up a whole lot more than us. Yeah, why has it gone up more? Because it was so low. That's why. And it's gone up much, much faster. We're still way ahead of them, of course. We hit a high. We went down a little bit in 08 and 09. We are now back actually to where we were in 07. In Ohio, if you run a factory, you will have trouble getting a railway car to ship stuff. Talked to an owner of a factory here in Ohio recently. It's in Mount Vernon, Ohio. She's trying to get 200 employees to work in the factory, and there's nobody to hire. Why? They're good jobs. Who wants to live in Mount Vernon, Ohio? And you know what? We had a noble but nefarious belief in this country that everybody ought to own their own home. Remember that? We passed laws that said, oh, 100% down. If you have everybody owning their own home, what happens to labor mobility? Goes into the basement. And if labor mobility goes down, what happens to unemployment? Goes up. Pretty simple. Now, actually, manufacturing in the U.S. is up 75% since 1990. The factories of America are running full steam. People say, where's the jobs? And the answer is the same place as farms. 100 years ago, the majority of the people in this country worked on farms. What percentage do you think it is today? 2%. Why? Because productivity just, those $600,000 tractors, and John Deere just introduced a new one. It's a big thing. They're all done by GPS. Person sitting in the space age. They look like Star Wars is what they look like. I've got on my cell phone afterwards so I can show you some. It's amazing. And John Deere has just introduced where one operator can run 7 of those tractors at the same time. It's all done wireless, satellite, how much fertilizer you put on and so forth. Productivity has soared, so employment has gone down to less than 2% today. Same thing's happening in manufacturing and accounting, and to some degree in legal services and pharmacy like that. You can now, in the big pharmacies, get the pills measured by robots. And I don't know, but I've heard that some law firms, big ones, actually have attorneys in India now operating as efficiently or maybe more so, and they actually write English. They may speak it a little bit differently, but why? In 1950, 31% of all employees in the U.S. were in non-farm, were in factories. Today, that's less than 9%, and it will go the same way as agriculture. Do we need anybody working in factories in the future? Yeah, about 2%. A lot of people say, oh, the economy must be really bad because there are no jobs. No, the economy is really good in manufacturing and agriculture and lots of other businesses. Why? Because of what it took 1,000 workers to produce in 1950 could be produced by 177 today. I was in a client here in Columbus, and I was walking around the accounting department. All these empty desks in the accounting department. Now, this firm has gone up in sales. 20 years ago, I said, why all the empty desks? They said, 20 years ago, we had 42 accountants. Now we have 16. Can 16 accountants do as much as 42 in the past? Sure. If you want to understand unemployment, that's what you have to understand. Not some economic models that says, oh, let's drive the interest rates down and that'll cause more jobs. That is not true. You see, what we've really had is structural unemployment. How many had a statistics course? Okay, you all know what a regression equation is. If you drew the regression equation in here, what would it look like? Start over here and go like that. The peaks of unemployment keep getting higher. They didn't actually get as high in this last recession as they did back in the 80s. You'll hear, this is the worst recession since the Great Depression. No, not in terms of unemployment. It wasn't as bad as the 80s. And you see what's happening to the troughs. These are the employed people. Unemployment goes down. That's going up every year. Why? Because of productivity. Now, is there any answer? In the last 3 or 4 minutes here, I'll give you the answer. Yes, there is. It's called garage entrepreneurs. I didn't invent that term. A lot of people who study entrepreneurship credit it to, back in 1939, David Packard and William Hewlett started in that garage in Palo Alto. Coincidentally, was that be good for the entrepreneurial activity in Palo Alto over the decades? Yeah. Same thing is true in Columbus. We are the Silicon Valley of the Midwest. Austin, Texas, Columbus, Ohio, Palo Alto. Now, when I say garage, you don't actually have to start in a garage. It can be in a dormitory room, kitchen, apartment, and increasingly in a university lab or incubator, that sort of thing. But what I'm really talking about is people start a business with very limited capital. I have one chapter in my new book on TMC, why most firms fail. TMC stands for too much capital. You are more likely to fail if you're overcapitalized, because what that really means is you're overexpensed. And by limited capital, I tell people, don't give up your day job when you start a new firm. Does this really work today? How many know who Sarah Blakely is? You don't? Is there a gender gap here? World's youngest self-made female billionaire. No husbands or fathers inheriting the firm. That's not the deal. She read books on marketing when I was at the office, which they've recreated from Sam Walton, just the way he left it, just a few days before he died of cancer. You can see the office. It's got piles of papers, magazines on the floor, and everything else. You know, an empty desk is a sign of an empty mind, my motto. And you know what he's got in the back of his book? He was getting ready to die in a few days, and he knew it, but he was worried about the future of the firm. You know what the book is that he has open? A marketing book. Phil Kotler's Marketing. Only one way that story could have been better. But she used a textbook to prepare her own patent application. You know why? She went to a lawyer who said, yeah, I can do it. Because what she basically did, guys, is reinvent the girdle. She needed a patent. Attorney said, I can do that for $3,000. This was 10 years ago. She said, I don't have $3,000. She went to the public library night after night after night and learned how to do her own patent application and did it because she didn't have $3,000 to pay you. You see what I think about it? I thought, wonder if that attorney said, you know, I charged $3,000 for this. You don't have the cash. I'll tell you what, I'll just take a little equity. Just maybe 1%. I don't know. 1% of $1 billion. Let's see. That'd be more than 3,000, wouldn't it? Solo practitioners have to think that way within the code of professional conduct, of course. And how did she get the capital? As a babysitter. Warren Buffett got his capital as a paper carrier. Deducted, as a teenager, deducted his bicycle. True story. She worked at Danka selling copier machines, kept her day job. Here's the deal. No outside investors, no debt. Are small businesses really important part of the economy? Yeah, they represent 99.7% of all employer firms. If you said, I want to do some business work, well, 99.7 are small, employ half of all employees, pay 40%, 44% of all payroll, generated 65% of the net new jobs, and that study was done in 2007. It's probably closer to 100% now. Hire 43% of the high-tech workers, are 52% home-based. So where's your client going to probably be? Working out of his or her home. And they, I love this, provide 13 times more patents per employee than large patent firms. These are some interesting people. I call them garage entrepreneurs. In the book I just almost finished writing. I don't know. Where did he get his capital to start? Anybody know? Everybody knows that's Mr. Wexner. He didn't have the money himself, so an aunt in Chicago loaned him $5,000 on the condition he wouldn't actually spend it. Just use it as collateral or inventory. I don't know. I think it worked out pretty well. How many employees in Columbus owe their job to him? Add in well, maybe not DSW, but add in Abercrombie and Fitch and Lane Bryant and Limited 2 and all of these. It's a significant percentage. Why do we not have so much unemployment? Because of people like that. Sam Walton, I've already talked about. That was the original store, 1963. And I will finish in 2 minutes, I promise you, but feel free to leave. Everybody know who this is? He started in his dormitory room. He wanted to incorporate, he's buying, selling computer parts. Michael Dell. Started in his dormitory room, dropped out of the first year, and moved into, rented a garage. How did he get incorporated? Because a small practice lawyer said, yeah, I'll do that for you, $1,000. I don't have $1,000. So he took an upgrade on his hard drive in lieu of a fee. I think it worked out pretty well for him, too. You know the story of him. He didn't start in a garage. Where did he start? Took the car out of the garage and started in the trunk. I don't know, does Worthington Industries employ many people? Well, they're not employing too many blue jackets right now, but everybody know who this is? Cheryl Kruger. She didn't start in a garage. She started in her kitchen. She didn't give up her day job. How did she get her college degree? By working 3 jobs. If you got rich parents, take a wrapper from them. But if you don't, you work your way through. The way I did, and others. Everybody know who this is? He started a little firm called Check Free. And according to the Wall Street Journal, when he sold it to Fiserv, Check Free was the first really electronic funds transfer. Started in a little tiny building just north of the university. And he and I met many times on Saturday mornings out at TJ's on Riverside to get this firm going. One report said he took $800 million in cash and still kept a lot of stock. You know what? He started in his home for health clubs. Were you his attorney back then? You see how a firm would grow? If you get some of these entrepreneurs now, do you have the knowledge to help them? The person who did Michael Dell or Cheryl Kruger or Pete Kite and this woman, I do not have time. You will have to read the book to find out about Bridget Murphy, who started one of America's dynasties because her husband died at 43 and she had 4 kids to take care of, and she had to do that, and so she started one of the richest families in America. You can read about it in the book. This book is called Saving America: How Garage Entrepreneurs Create Jobs and Build Fortunes for Families and Investors. In the book, the last chapter is about how anyone, the poorest person in America, can be a millionaire when they retire. 2 words explain that. Start young. But if you're 50, you can still do it, but only by investing in entrepreneurs. And if you're a 50-year-old attorney who want to be worth millions when you retire, which I went over the IRA and 401k stuff, which if you're in a sole practice or a small firm, you better really understand that stuff because you can't depend on the partners to pay for your retirement. If anybody wants a chapter, read it. The book probably won't come out till the first of the year. Email me. I'll be glad to send you a chapter. The table of contents, if you want to read in the chapters, 1 condition. You have to agree to give me feedback on it. Tell me where it's not clear or something like that. And if you want anything else to read, if you're interested in branding, this book is on branding, how to brand, including a section on personal branding. If you have customers who are in the technology area, that's what this book is about. What works in technology and what doesn't. If you have any retail customers, retailers, or suppliers to retailers, that's what that book is about. Les Wexner was kind enough to write the foreword to me for this book, and it's actually been one of the best-selling books. But it really explains how retailing and all their suppliers are changing from supply chains to demand chains. You have healthcare clients, that's what that book is about. And this book, it could be very valuable to, that's the textbook on consumer behavior. We wrote the first edition in 1968. That's the 10th edition. It's in languages used all over the world. And I particularly recommend to this book for anybody who suffers from insomnia. If you have trouble going to sleep at night, pick up a few pages of textbook and you will be there. Anyway, how are these times? Are these good times or bad times? Ralph Waldo Emerson, who said, "These times, like our all times, are the best of times, if we but know what to do with them." And that's the winners in this room, who look at the environment and know what to do with these times. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Blackwell. Really appreciate that refresher. Hit the time to the sheet after you do that. That's going to be your, like I mentioned, the entry to win an iPod sometime before the end of the year at one of our future events. So sign the sheet on your way out the door if you didn't get on there earlier. And join me for lunch next Thursday down here in the conference.